My wife sponsored a scholarship student. While I was out of town, he snuck into our apartment, put on my silk pajamas, and posted a photo to his Instagram with the caption, "The best gifts are the ones you feel next to your skin." Thanks, E. The words were a blatant challenge. But I wasn't worried. Not for a second. In a few short rounds, he'd be on his knees, begging for mercy. Because I knew, with absolute certainty, that when it came to spotting a wolf in sheep's clothing and gutting them, if my wife, Evelyn Vance, was number 2, no one on earth dared claim to be number 1. This whole drama, from the very beginning, was never meant for me. The photo appeared on an account I'd never seen before, sent to me from an anonymous number. The background was our guest bedroom, a room Evelyn and I had designed down to the last detail. I'd know it anywhere. The star of the photo was a young man, handsome in a delicate way, who couldn't have been much older than 20. He was wearing a pair of deep navy silk pajamas. They were a birthday gift from Evelyn last month, a bespoke, limited edition set from a London tailor. They were so expensive, I hadn't even brought myself to wear them yet. He'd taken a selfie in the mirror, a faint, smug smile playing on his lips. The caption was a masterpiece of plausible deniability. The best gifts are the ones you feel next to your skin. Thanksy. It was followed by a blushing emoji. The post was set to close friends, but whoever sent me the screenshot obviously wanted me to see it. The anonymous sender had added only one line of text. "Man, you've got trouble at home. You should probably deal with it." I stared at the picture, and a hot flash of anger shot through me. It lasted all of 3 seconds before the cold reality set in. Evelyn and I had been married for 5 years. We'd been together since college, building our company from the ground up. I knew exactly who she was. She was brilliant, decisive, and had a bullshit detector that was second to none. This kid's game was amateur hour. Trying to drive a wedge between us with this middle school level scheme wasn't just an insult to our marriage. It was an insult to our intelligence. I recognized the boy in the photo. His name was Leo Rivera. He was the recipient of a full-ride scholarship Evelyn had set up a month ago through our family foundation, a one-on-one mentorship program. Evelyn had a good heart. Once our company took off, she dedicated a portion of our profits to charity every year. This year, she decided that targeted support was better than a blanket donation, so she chose to sponsor one academically gifted student from a low-income background through their entire college education. The foundation sent over a few candidate profiles. Evelyn chose Leo. Her reasoning was that his grades are the best, and in his application photo, his eyes held a stubborn, defiant spark that reminded her of me, back when we had nothing. I had joked about it at the time. "Are you trying to find my replacement? Be careful you don't let a fox into the henhouse." Evelyn had rolled her eyes, pinching my cheek. "Cole Matthews, you have an impossibly high opinion of yourself. There's only one you in this world. And as for a fox, this isn't a henhouse. If he's a fox, he'll have to ask permission from the hunter first." It seemed my joke had been a prophecy. The young fox was already baring his teeth. I didn't reply to the anonymous number. Instead, I forwarded the screenshot directly to Evelyn with a simple message. "Honey, about these pajamas. Do you think they fit him well?" Her call came less than a second later. "Cole, don't be angry. I'm coming home right now. I'll handle this." Her voice was calm and serious, without a trace of panic. "I'm not angry." I chuckled, leaning back in my office chair. "I'm just curious to see how my master hunter plans to deal with this cocky little fox. Just you wait." Evelyn's voice warmed with a hint of amusement. "I guarantee you'll be satisfied." When I got home from work early, Leo Rivera was standing stiffly in the middle of our living room like a defendant awaiting a sentence. Evelyn was seated on the sofa, legs crossed, radiating an aura of absolute authority. She wasn't looking at Leo. Instead, she was slowly, methodically polishing a priceless antique vase, the only object in our living room without a clear price tag. It was a family heirloom, passed down from her grandfather. She treasured it. Normally, she got nervous if I even breathed on it too hard. Seeing me, Evelyn looked up and gave me a reassuring smile before her gaze shifted back to Leo. "Leo, care to explain?" Her voice was devoid of any emotion. When Leo saw me, his body gave an almost imperceptible flinch before his eyes turned red. He dropped to his knees with a thud, his voice choked with sobs. "I'm so sorry, Evelyn. I'm so sorry, Cole. I didn't mean to do it." Oh, wow. Straight for the big guns. Too bad that act didn't work on Evelyn. She didn't even raise an eyebrow. She continued wiping the vase with a silk cloth, her voice dangerously calm. "You didn't mean to? So you sleepwalked into my home, sleepwalked into my husband's pajamas, and then sleep-posted to your Instagram." Leo's face flushed a deep crimson. He stammered, I was just so grateful to you, Evelyn. Not only did you pay for my school, but when my mom got sick a few days ago, You sent me $5,000 for her medical bills without a second thought. I just wanted to come see you, to thank you, but you weren't home. So you picked the lock to my apartment? Evelyn set the vase down, her eyes finally turning sharp as glass. No, it wasn't like that. Leo waved his hands frantically. The last time you came to my campus, you dropped your spare key in your car. I found it and wanted to return it, but I never got the chance. Today I just had this crazy impulse. I wanted to see what my benefactor's home looked like, to feel what your life was like. He was crying freely now, a pathetic, sobbing mess. I saw Cole's pajamas, and they were just so beautiful. I just wanted to try them on, to feel what it's like to be a successful person, to motivate myself to study harder, so I could be someone like you, Cole. I only posted it to a private group for my family back home. They're all poor, and I just wanted them to see I'm doing okay now, so they wouldn't worry. I never thought someone would take a screenshot and send it around, causing you and Evelyn so much trouble. It was a masterful performance, a perfectly crafted speech. He'd painted himself as a grateful, curious, slightly vain, but fundamentally good kid from the wrong side of the tracks. He explained his motive and conveniently shifted the blame to some non-existent, malicious relative. If I were an outsider, I might have actually bought it. But I wasn't, and my wife sure as hell wasn't. Evelyn listened quietly until he was finished. Then she smiled. She stood up, walked over to Leo, and looked down at him. Are you done? Leo, tears streaming down his face, nodded. Good. Evelyn nodded back. Then she did something nobody could have predicted. She raised her hand and, with a swift, brutal motion, swept the priceless antique vase off its pedestal. Crash! The vase shattered on the marble floor, exploding into 100 pieces. The sharp, clear sound stunned both Leo and me into silence. Leo's face went white with terror. He stayed frozen on his knees, not daring to move. My own heart skipped a beat. That was her grandfather's vase. What was she? Oh dear, Evelyn said, as if just realizing what she'd done. She covered her mouth in mock surprise. My hand must have slipped. She looked down at the horrified boy, her smile innocent and cruel. Leo, look, it's broken. My most cherished possession, just like that. She slowly crouched down, meeting his terrified gaze, her eyes as cold as a frozen lake. This vase was the only thing my grandfather left me. It was priceless, but now I've broken it with my own two hands. Do you know why? Leo, completely terrified, could only shake his head. Because it's dirty now, Evelyn said, her words slow and deliberate. Just now, while I was polishing it, I imagined you. I imagined your hands, the same hands that picked my lock, touching every piece of furniture in our home. I imagined you wearing my husband's pajamas, lying in our bed, and suddenly it felt filthy. Everything in this room feels filthy. Her voice was soft, but it was like a blade of ice twisting in Leo's gut. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, Leo. I sponsored you because I hoped you'd take the high road, that you'd use knowledge to change your destiny. Not so you could waste your energy on these cheap tricks, coveting things that don't belong to you. You wore my husband's pajamas to create the illusion of an affair, to drive a wedge between us. Your ambition, your schemes, all your grimy little thoughts. They were laid bare the second you hit post. Leo, your biggest mistake wasn't overestimating your tactics. It was underestimating my standards. Evelyn stood up. She pulled a card from her wallet and tossed it on the floor in front of him. There's $200,000 on this card. $100,000 is for your tuition and living expenses until you graduate. I'm paying it all at once. From this moment on, our transaction is complete. We have no further connection. The other $100,000 is for damages. Because... She paused, a cold smirk gracing her lips. You startled me just now? I get clumsy when I'm startled. You made me break my vase. So, you're going to pay for it. Leo's face went from ghostly white to a sickly green. He wanted to argue, to beg, but under Evelyn's all-seeing gaze, he couldn't utter a single word. It was a checkmate move, swift and brutal. She hadn't just exposed his entire scheme to his face. She had used an accident he could never repay to sever any possibility of him ever bothering us again. By paying off his entire scholarship in one lump sum, she removed any excuse for him to approach us under the guise of gratitude. And by making him pay for the priceless vase, while actually giving him $100,000, she had, on paper, made him our debtor. What kind of person buried under a mountain of debt would have the nerve to show their face to their creditor again? Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Leo stumbled out of our apartment, clutching the debit card like a ghost. I walked over to Evelyn, wrapping my arms around her, my heart aching as I looked at the shattered porcelain on the floor. Did you really have to break it? Don't you regret it? Evelyn leaned against my shoulder and shook her head, a hint of exhaustion in her voice. I don't. It's just an object. It's not more important than you. She paused, then added, besides, it was a replica. I swapped it out. I froze. A replica? When did you do that? The moment I decided to let him come over. Evelyn closed her eyes. I had a bad feeling about him. There was something in his eyes that didn't match his file. I knew I had to be prepared. A chill went down my spine, followed by a wave of warmth. My master hunter had been setting her trap from the very beginning. I thought that would be the end of it. But I had underestimated Leo. Or rather, I had underestimated the more skilled hunter pulling his strings. Leo vanished for a few days. Just as I was starting to believe he'd taken the 200,000 and quietly crawled back under his rock, a media firestorm erupted online, aimed directly at me and Evelyn. An article titled "The Scholarship Kid and the Sociopath Heiress: The Control and Humiliation Behind a Mask of Kindness" went viral across every major platform. Written from Leo's perspective, the piece was a heart-wrenching accusation of Evelyn's depraved need for control. He claimed that Evelyn's sponsorship was never about charity. It was about grooming him into a pet she could manipulate at will. He alleged that she frequently called him late at night under the pretense of checking in, making suggestive comments, and psychologically tormenting him. He said the pajama incident was a trap she had set herself, that she had given him the key, invited him over, and intentionally left the pajamas out to tempt him into making a mistake. The Instagram post, he claimed, was a desperate cry for help. As for what happened in our living room, he painted it as a cruel, one-sided humiliation of the poor by the rich. In front of her husband, she smashed a priceless antique and then smiled at me and said, "See this? This is something you can never afford to repay. Just like me, something you can never have." She threw money at me, told me to get out, and forced me to sign an agreement forbidding me from ever speaking about her good deeds again. The article was pure dynamite, expertly pushing every hot button: class warfare, emotional abuse, the wealth gap. The accompanying photos were chosen with surgical precision. There is a selfie of Leo huddled under the covers in his dorm room, only his swollen, red-rimmed eyes visible. There was a screenshot of the large deposit into his bank account, framed as hush money. And there was a picture of the shattered porcelain from our vase, presented as ironclad proof of Evelyn's violent temper. Public outrage was immediate and overwhelming. Online crusaders materialized out of thin air, burying us in an avalanche of hate. What a monster! A devil hiding behind a charity. So being rich means you can do whatever you want? You can just trample on a kid's dignity like that. Her husband is no better, just standing there like a coward while his wife tortures someone. Find them, dox them, expose these disgusting excuses for human beings. Our company's website was hacked. The customer service lines were flooded. Our personal cell phone numbers were leaked, and we were inundated with hundreds, then thousands of hateful, threatening text messages. Evelyn's face was pale. I held her close and whispered, "Don't be afraid. I'm here." She shook her head, her eyes holding not fear, but a cold, burning anger. "I'm not afraid. I'm just disgusted. Cole, this is bigger than him. I'd already figured that out. Leo, a broke college kid, no matter how cunning, couldn't have orchestrated a media assault this precise and vicious in such a short amount of time. Someone with serious resources was guiding him. What do you want to do?" I asked her. "Fight fire with fire." Evelyn's gaze sharpened. "He wants a PR war? We'll give him one. He wants to destroy my reputation. I'll make sure he's so thoroughly disgraced he'll never recover." This time, my master hunter was out for blood. We didn't issue a statement. We didn't engage with the furious mob online. Amid the deafening roar of condemnation, we remained eerily silent. Our opponents took this as a sign of fear and doubled down on their attacks. Self-proclaimed journalists even secured an in-depth interview with Leo. On video, he wept, delivering an Oscar-worthy performance that won him a fresh wave of sympathy. Just as the public narrative reached its peak, when even mainstream media outlets began chiming in, calling for the protection of the vulnerable and warning against the capitalist abuse of goodwill, Evelyn made her move. She did only one thing. Through our company's legal department, she filed a lawsuit against Leo Rivera for defamation. Simultaneously, she announced an online press conference under the company's name. At the press conference, Evelyn was dressed in a sharp black suit, calm and professional. Facing a sea of cameras and reporters, she said only one thing. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press, regarding the recent rumors online, I will not offer any explanation, because facts are more persuasive than any argument. I'm just going to show you a few things." The large screen behind her lit up. The first item was an audio file. It was the complete, unedited recording of the conversation between Evelyn and Leo in our living room that day. We had security systems that could be activated to record. In the audio, Leo's "I didn't mean to, I was just so grateful, and I just wanted to motivate myself" confession stood in stark, ironic contrast to his article's claim of it being a cry for help. Every word Evelyn spoke was calm and measured. She was sharp, yes, but there wasn't a single hint of harassment or seduction. And when she said, "You made me break my vase, so you're going to pay for it," the context made it crystal clear. It wasn't a humiliation. It was a masterful tactic to end his manipulation for good. When the audio finished, the room was silent. The second item appeared on the screen, a detailed report of financial records and call logs. It showed, unequivocally, that apart from the scholarship funds and the $5,000 emergency payment, there had been no other private financial transactions between Evelyn and Leo. Furthermore, the bank statement showed that the $5,000 had been transferred the very next day into an account for an online video game, used to purchase in-game items. His mother's illness had been a complete fabrication. The call logs also proved that Evelyn had initiated contact with Leo only a handful of times, always during normal business hours. Leo, on the other hand, had frequently sent her vague, solicitous texts late at night, all of which Evelyn had ignored. The tide of public opinion began to turn. But if the first two pieces of evidence damaged Leo's image as a perfect victim, the third was the kill shot. A high-definition security video appeared on the screen. The location was the hallway outside our apartment. The timestamp was from 2 days after the vase incident, the day before Leo published his tell-all article. The video showed a stylish, middle-aged woman in sunglasses handing a large manila envelope to Leo. He took it, bowing and scraping, his face plastered with a fawning, sycophantic smile. It was a smile that bore no resemblance to the tortured, on the verge of a breakdown victim from his video interview. There was no sound, but everyone understood. This was a transaction. Leo wasn't a victim. He was an actor. Every word he'd spoken, every tear he'd shed, was part of script. And the woman in sunglasses was the director. The press conference ended, and the internet exploded. The same people who had been calling for our heads just days before now turned their fury on Leo. Holy SHD. The plot twist of the century. This kid is disgusting. Give this guy an Oscar. He played every single one of us. Find out who that woman is. This is clearly a corporate sabotage hit. Evelyn Vance is a total badass. That counterattack was epic. Overnight, Leo went from a symbol of hope to a reviled con artist. The university immediately issued a statement announcing his expulsion and a formal investigation. With the mountain of evidence we provided, the court quickly accepted our defamation case. He was facing serious legal consequences. We had won the media war, decisively, utterly. I looked at Evelyn, sitting beside me, calmly scrolling through the flood of apologies and praise online, and my heart swelled with pride. My wife was just that powerful, that brilliant. But at the same time, a question began to form in my mind. Who was the woman in the sunglasses? Why would she go to such lengths to destroy Evelyn? Was it really just business competition? I had a gut feeling this wasn't over, and that the woman's identity would be something we never could have expected. Evelyn seemed to sense it too. In the wake of our triumph, Evelyn showed little joy. Instead, she seemed more preoccupied than ever. That night, she locked herself in her study and didn't come out until morning. The next day, she handed me a file, her expression grim. "Cole, I need you to run a background check on this person." I took the file. When I saw the name on the tab, my eyes widened. Rhonda Hall. The name was vaguely familiar. I recalled she was one of the founding members of her father's company, Vance Enterprises. She'd left years ago for some reason or another. "She's the woman in the video," Evelyn said. I immediately sent the security footage to our company's tech department. A few hours later, they sent back a crystal clear, digitally enhanced facial image. Without the sunglasses, though marked by the years, the face was unmistakably that of the sharp, formidable woman who had once been Lawrence Vance's right hand. It was her. Rhonda Hall. Why would she do this? I couldn't wrap my head around it. When she left the company, Dad gave her a huge severance package, didn't he? This can't be about business competition. This is too vicious, too personal. Evelyn's father was a self-made man who had built a billion-dollar empire from nothing. He had died of a sudden heart attack when Evelyn was just starting college. Evelyn had mentioned Rhonda before, describing her as her father's most trusted partner and mentor. They had been incredibly close. The story went that Rhonda's husband became a gambling addict and racked up enormous debts. To pay them off, Rhonda had embezzled company funds. Out of respect for their long friendship, Lawrence hadn't pressed charges. He handled it privately, gave her a generous sum of money, and let her resign quietly. He had done more than enough. But now, it seemed there was more to the story. I don't know, Evelyn said, shaking her head, her face a mask of confusion. All I know is that after my father died, it was like Rhonda fell off the face of the earth. I always assumed she was too ashamed to ever face us again. Maybe it's time we faced her, I suggested. Evelyn was already one step ahead of me. She quickly found Rhonda's current address, a high-end assisted living facility in Napa. We drove out the next day. The facility was serene and beautiful. Rhonda had a private suite, bright and immaculate. She didn't seem surprised to see us. She brewed tea, invited us to sit, and regarded us with a calm, detached expression, as if she had seen it all. I knew you'd come, she said, her voice slightly hoarse. Rhonda, I want to know why, Evelyn said, getting straight to the point. Rhonda lifted her teacup, blowing gently on the surface, not answering immediately. She looked at Evelyn with a complex mix of nostalgia, pity, and something else, a deep, bottomless well of resentment. Why? She gave a short, cold laugh. Evelyn, maybe you should ask your great father what he did to me. That's right, Lawrence Vance. Rhonda's voice suddenly rose, her calm facade cracking to reveal the seething hatred beneath. He was a hypocrite, a goddamn thief. I built that company with him. We bled for it side by side. He promised me half of it. And what happened? When my husband was in trouble, when my family was at its lowest point, he forced me to sign over my shares. He kicked me out with a pittance he called his severance package and stole everything I had ever worked for. Rhonda was becoming more agitated, her eyes bloodshot. My husband never recovered from the shame of it. He drank himself to death. My son, Leo's uncle, had to drop out of school because we were bankrupt and being chased by creditors. He's never amounted to anything. Lawrence Vance destroyed my family. How dare he die peacefully as a billionaire? And how dare you sit there like a princess, enjoying a life that should have been ours? Leo is my sister's son. I watch him grow up. He's smart, ambitious, like me, and like the man Lawrence Vance used to be. I sent him to you because I wanted you to know what it feels like to be stabbed in the back by someone you trust, to have everything stolen from you. I wanted to destroy you, to destroy the one thing Lawrence Vance ever truly loved. Her words hit us like a bomb. Evelyn and I were stunned. The version of events Rhonda was screaming about was a universe away from the story I knew. No, that's impossible, Evelyn whispered, her face ashen. My father wasn't that kind of man. Not that kind of man. Rhonda laughed, a hysterical, broken sound. Go ask him yourself. Oh, wait, you can't. He's dead, and thank God for that. It's just a shame he couldn't be here to see his precious daughter dragged through hell. Looking at Rhonda's face, twisted by years of bitterness, a cold dread washed over me. If she was telling the truth, then Evelyn's father was a monster, and we had been living a life of privilege built on the ruins of another family. If that was the case, what did that make our takedown of Leo? Just another case of the rich bullying the poor. For the first time, a profound sense of doubt and regret took root in my heart. Evelyn was in even worse shape. She was trembling, her lips completely drained of color. Her father had always been her hero, a towering figure of integrity. Rhonda's words had just dynamited the foundations of her world. We left the facility in a daze. On the drive back, Evelyn was silent, just staring blankly out the window. I knew the blow she had just suffered was devastating. When we got home, she locked herself in the study, just as she had before. This time, I knew what she was doing. Inside the study was a safe, left to her by her father. Before he died, he had given Evelyn the key, telling her to open it only if Vance Enterprises faced a crisis that threatened its very existence, or if she ever encountered a doubt so profound she couldn't resolve it. For all these years, Evelyn had honored his wish. She had never opened it. Until now, I sat outside the study door all night. At dawn, the door opened. Evelyn emerged. Her eyes were bloodshot and she was still pale, but the confusion and pain were gone. In their place was a quiet clarity, the kind that comes only after you've seen the whole, unvarnished truth. She was holding an old manila envelope. She handed it to me, her voice a raw whisper. Cole, you should read this. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside was a thick stack of letterhead and copies of various documents. The letter was in her father's handwriting, strong and steady, just like the man himself. To my dearest daughter, Evelyn, if you are reading this letter, it means you have encountered a crisis of faith, or you have met with Rhonda Hall. My child, I know you must have 1,000 questions about me, about Rhonda, about the company's past. Please forgive me for waiting until the end of my life to tell you the entire truth in this way. Rhonda did not lie to you, but she also does not know the full story. Years ago, she and I were the best of partners. I did promise her that when the company succeeded, we would share it equally. But later, I went back on my word. I used some unsavory methods to transfer all of her shares into my name. On the surface, I was a backstabbing partner, a predator who took advantage of a friend's crisis. I imagine that is exactly how Rhonda sees me. But why did I do it? Child, please look at the documents that follow. I flipped past the letter. There was a stack of medical diagnoses, records of massive bank withdrawals, and loan agreements from offshore casinos. All the evidence pointed to one person, Rhonda's husband, Marcus Hall. In the letter, Lawrence continued, Rhonda is a brilliant woman, but when it came to matters of the heart, she was terribly blind. Her husband, Marcus, was a con man from the very beginning. He was only ever after her money. After he had drained her personal savings, he got into gambling and accrued a staggering amount of debt. To pay it off, Rhonda began leveraging company assets. She was even preparing to sell her shares. My child, you have to understand, the company was at a critical growth stage then. If her shares fell into the hands of the loan sharks who were after Marcus, the entire enterprise would have been destroyed. It was our life's work. I cannot stand by and watch it burn to the ground. I tried to reason with her. I pleaded with her, I yelled at her, but nothing worked. She was blinded by love, convinced that Marcus would change. I had no other choice but to do what I did. I stole her shares and gave her a sum of money that she saw as a severance. But in truth, I never touched a cent of that money or her assets. I used it to establish a blind trust in her name. All of her dividends from those years went into it as well. I calculated that by the time she turned 50, the fund would be substantial enough for her and her son to live the rest of their lives in comfort. My plan was to wait until she had fully recovered from that disastrous marriage and then give it all back to her. But I never made it to that day. And Rhonda's pride and her hatred for me meant she would never see me again. The path for me to explain myself was closed forever. And so I took this secret to my grave. Child, your father was not a perfect man. To save our company, I hurt my best friend, and I condemned her to live half her life consumed by hatred. That is my sin. This letter and all the evidence is now yours. What you do with it is your decision. You can make it public to clear my name, but doing so will undoubtedly wound Rhonda to her very core, forcing her to live out her days in regret. Or you can continue to keep this secret. Let me remain the villain in her story. Perhaps for her, living with a clear purpose for vengeance is a kinder fate. Whatever you decide, I will support you. Just remember one thing. In this life, you must be kind. But before you are kind, you must first learn to protect yourself. The letter was signed with his name and the date. By the time I finished reading, tears were streaming down my face. So this was the truth. It wasn't a story of betrayal, but one of silent protection. Lawrence Vance wasn't a thief. He was a guardian. He had used a cruel, pragmatic method to protect not only his life's work, but also the future of the friend he had wronged. He shouldered all the blame, leaving clarity and fortune to others. What a profound and tragic man. I looked at Evelyn. Her tears had already dried. She picked up the phone on her desk and dialed a number. Mr. Abrams? This is Evelyn Vance. I need you to prepare some documents immediately regarding the trust fund of Ms. Rhonda Hall. I've decided to initiate the transfer process now. I was stunned. You're going to give it all back to her. Evelyn nodded, her gaze firm, without a shred of hesitation. Dad was right. Sometimes the truth is more painful than a lie. Forcing her to see that the person she's hated her whole life was actually her greatest protector. Making her realize that her own blindness and obsession ruined her life. That kind of regret would be worse than death for her. Rhonda has lived in hatred for too long. It's been a bitter existence. What she did to us was wrong, and she will face the legal consequences for it. But after that, I want her to have the chance to start a new life. My father's name doesn't need to be cleared for the world. As long as I know the truth, and you know the truth, that's enough. I walked over and held her tightly. In that moment, all the love, hate, regret, and anger in my heart melted away into an endless well of admiration and tenderness for the woman in my arms. She was kind, but she had teeth. She was compassionate, but she was rational. She could win a war with breathtaking strategy, and then, in the moment of victory, choose the most merciful path. My wife wasn't just an expert at spotting manipulators. She was a woman of true wisdom and grace. How did I ever get so lucky? The rest of the process unfolded smoothly. For conspiracy to commit defamation, Rhonda Hall was sentenced to 1 year in prison. Before she was incarcerated, our lawyer, Mr. Abrams, met with her and presented her with a complete trust fund portfolio. We didn't go. Evelyn said some things are better left unsaid, some meetings better left to the imagination. We heard that when Rhonda saw the documents, she completely broke down. She couldn't believe it, couldn't accept that the man she had despised for 2 decades had been protecting her all along. She apparently cried in that visiting room for an entire afternoon, a gut-wrenching, soul-cleansing cry of regret, shame, and an awakening that had come 20 years too late. For fraud and defamation, Leo was expelled from the university and faced his own legal penalties. After his release, he was reportedly too ashamed to show his face anywhere and returned to his hometown in disgrace. The storm finally passed. Life returned to normal. Our company, far from being damaged, emerged with a reputation for integrity and strength, earning us more respect and opportunities than ever before. A year later, Rhonda was released. She never contacted us. Instead, she had a lawyer donate the entire trust fund, which had grown to an astronomical sum, to charity in Lawrence Vance's name, establishing a new scholarship for students just like Leo, but who were genuinely deserving. She kept only a small portion for herself, enough to live out her days quietly. Then, she left the city and was never heard from again. We did receive one final letter from her, with no return address. It contained only one sentence. "Evelyn, I am sorry. And please, tell your father for me. Thank you." Evelyn read the letter and was quiet for a long time. Finally, she looked up at me and smiled. It was a smile that had let go of all the weight of the past. "Come on, Cole. Let's go see Dad." The afternoon sun was warm and golden. We brought a bouquet of white lilies to Lawrence's grave. Evelyn placed the letter gently in front of the headstone, then used her hands to slowly brush away the dust. She knelt down, leaning against the cool marble as if she were a little girl again, sharing secrets with her father. "Dad," she said, "thank you. Did you hear her? Dad, I never understood why you were always so busy, why you were so strict with me, why you always seemed to have the weight of the world on your shoulders. I think I'm starting to get it now. Dad, thank you. Thank you for teaching me what real strength and kindness look like." I stood behind her, giving her the moment. The setting sun cast our 2 shadows long across the grass, making them overlap until they were one. I watched the profile of her face, the face I had loved for so many years, now etched with a quiet tenderness and an unshakable resolve. I realized that this whole ordeal, in its own way, had been a gift. It had shown us the darkness in human nature, but it had also allowed us to touch the light. It made us more certain than ever that the path we were on and the person we were walking it with were the truest choices of our lives. On the way home, Evelyn suddenly turned to me. "Cole, if one day I ever become like Rhonda, paranoid, bitter, completely unreasonable, would you still want me?" I thought for a moment, then squeezed her hand, looking her dead in the eye. "Then I'd do everything in my power to pull you back from a cliff. And if I couldn't, I'd jump with you, because you're my entire world. For you, I'd do anything." Evelyn stared at me for a beat, then a beautiful smile spread across her face, her eyes curving into happy crescents. She leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Don't worry. That will never happen, because..." She gave me a playful wink. "You have me to protect you. As long as I'm around, no wolf in sheep's clothing will ever get within 10 miles of you." I burst out laughing and started the car. Outside the window, the city lights were beginning to glitter, a river of stars on the horizon. I knew that no matter what storms lay ahead, as long as we were together, hand in hand, heart to heart, nothing could ever break us. Because love is the strongest armor in the world, and it is also the sharpest sword. And my wife is the best there ever was at wielding both. The end.